Welcome to Parker Dam State Park in northern Clearfield County, Pennsylvania. My name is Carey. I'm an environmental education specialist with the Bureau of State Parks. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the activity of ice skating, getting out in the wintertime, exercising in the outdoors, and enjoying Mother Nature, even when it's cold out. So the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is being safe on the ice. Most people, when they ice skate on artificial ice. Yes, it's still frozen water, but it's controlled in an environment indoors usually, sometimes outdoors, but it's artificially made. Today we're skating on Parker Lake, which is natural ice. And so when you're on natural ice, of course, you want to take some precautions. And the first thing that you should always be aware of is the thickness of the ice. You want the ice to be able to hold you. And we use a general guideline as far as thickness of the ice. You want to make sure that certain thicknesses are reached before you do certain activities on them. So if I was going to go ice fishing by myself, I would want to have at least 4 inches of ice underneath of me. If I was going to be out here skating with a small group of people, I'd like there to be 6 to 7 inches of ice. As the ice thickness increases, so can the various activities. You could be able to come out onto the ice, such as we do in the state park here. To clear the ice with machinery, we use a small tractor when there's more than 8 inches of ice. That's sufficient to hold that piece of equipment. So having a basic knowledge of some of those guidelines is the first step in being safe. And one of the things that we do here at the park is we monitor the ice around the rink for thickness to make sure that it reaches those minimums. And whenever the ice degrades or is not appropriate thickness and the conditions are not good for skating, we will post the area closed. Another one of the safety precautions that you would want to take is to come with a buddy. Come with another person. That way, if something happens, you have someone there that can help you out, go for help, those types of things. So here today, Eric Rensel, another one of the educators here at the park, is here skating with me. And so we're using that buddy system while we're out here on the ice. Another one of the things that you want to be aware of is to be dressed safely. Take those general precautions that you take when you go outside. Dress in layers for the winter time. We're going to be exercising and skating, so having layers is important. As you get warm, you can take layers off. If you start to get cold, you can put layers back on. Letting somebody know where you're going, when you expect to return, things like that are all very important. Another one in the winter time to remember is that the air is very dry. We're going to be exercising. Bring some water or something to drink. Hydrate yourself. You can dehydrate very quickly. And you can also get hypothermia very quickly. So make sure that you're staying warm. Get out here, move around while you're skating. When you're done, get yourself warm as soon as you can. One of the first things to discuss when we're going to go ice skating are the different types of skates. One that we won't talk about today are speed skates. So you might see those in the Olympics. They're a very, very different skate made for getting very, very fast on the skates and on the ice. And so you will have a very different looking skate if you're speed skating. But for us, I'm going to talk about the 2 most common types of skates that we're going to have, and that's going to be a figure skate and a hockey skate. And the differences are sort of a personal preference type of a thing. Some folks like to use figure skates, other folks like to use hockey skates. I have always worn hockey skates whenever I've skated, so I prefer the feel of the hockey skate. When you have a hockey skate, you have a boot that is molded, and so it's fairly stiff. You have a skate blade holder, that plastic part underneath, and then you have the blade, which all skates are going to have about 1/4 inch of steel that makes up your blade. Now, hockey skates are a little bit different in that they're a little bit rockered, which means they have a little bit of a curve to them. And there is no toe pick like a figure skate. When I show you the figure skate, we'll talk about what that toe pick is for. These are made for maneuvering and speed while playing the game of hockey. And some folks find them the most comfortable to use when they're out skating because this stiff upper provides really good support for your ankle when you're standing on your skate. A figure skate, on the other hand, is also stiff with the upper part of the boot, but some people find that it's not as thick and moves a little bit more with their ankle and isn't as supportive. And it has a heel on it, similar to a boot. So you're sitting on that skate blade, which is about the same thickness, a little differently than you are in a hockey skate. Now a figure skate blade is a little bit flatter, and there's a toe pick at the front. Now when we learn about stopping, some people think that that's to help them stop. but a toe pick on a figure skate is actually for doing tricks and maneuvers. And so you don't ever want to use your toe pick if you're using figure skates for stopping. You may end up on the ice. So once we've decided which type of skate we would like to use, the next thing is to put them on. What we want from skates is for them to be very snug. Some folks like to wear their sneakers or shoes kind of loose fitting. Maybe they like to slip them on, slip them off. But for ice skates, your skates should be very snug. And when we tie them up, what we want to do is make sure again that our skates are snug and that we tie our laces as tight as we can get them without them being uncomfortable. We don't want them loose. We want to make sure that our ankle is supported in the boot, and we want to make sure those laces are very tight. And again, this is all personal preference in the point that you don't want to be uncomfortable, but they need to be very nice and snug and fairly tight fitting. So the first thing we need to learn when we learn how to get up on the skates is how to fall down appropriately without hurting ourselves. But sometimes this can be difficult if we get out of control. And we'll talk a little bit when we start to skate about keeping our body in a position to be in control so that we can fall correctly. But we usually want to try to fall to our sides and hit those soft spots, maybe where there's a little bit of padding with our clothing or with our body. We don't want to fall forward. If I fall forward and put my hands out, the ice is pretty slippery. My hands can go forward and I might take a bite out of the ice. This actual sheet of ice here, my brother left a half of a tooth when he was younger. So we don't want to have those types of accidents. If we fall backwards, we're going to fall on our tailbone, and we could go back and hit the back of our head. We don't want to do that. But if we fall to the side, often we have a little bit of padding in our thighs or our backsides, and then it's a little bit easier of a fall. Now when we do fall, to get back up, we want to get ourselves turned over a little bit on our hands and knees, take one skate, put that skate out in front of you, and you're going to try to lift up and push up off of that knee to stand up. And now I'm back up on the ice and I can go again. One of the first things that we want to do before we start skating is to stretch a little bit. We are going to exercise. We want to make sure those muscles are warm and loose. So a little bit of stretching out your leg muscles, kind of get them flexed, ready to go. I've already stretched a little bit before we get started, but just make sure that you're warmed up a little bit. That way we avoid those injuries that might occur when we're skating. The next thing that we want to do when we're out on the ice is that we want to get our balance a little bit. If it's the first time you're on skates, or it's been a long time since you've been on skates, remember that you're standing on two blades that are about 1/4 of an inch thick. And so it's a lot different than standing in our shoes. And so we have to learn our balance a little bit. Like most things that we've learned in gym class, we want our feet about shoulder width apart. And we also want to keep our knees bent a little bit, our knees out over our toes a little bit, almost like we're beginning to sit down. We're going to take our bottom and sort of begin that process of sitting down, but stop only at the first step. And our knees are bent out over our toes a little bit so that we can catch ourselves. We can recover in case we start to fall. What happens a lot of times is people skate stiff-legged. And if they start to lose their balance, you'll see their feet go out from underneath of them. When your knees are bent out over your toes a little bit and you're in that position, you can catch yourself a lot more easily. The next thing that we want to do for balance is we want to kind of lift each foot just a little bit, as if we were marching. So we can kind of get the feel for what it's like standing on just one of those blades. And once you're comfortable with marching in place, you can start to march across the ice. And it gives you a good feel for your balance on the ice. So now I feel pretty comfortable with my balance. Now when we're talking about ice skating, a lot of times I'm going to reference a skate's inside edge and its outside edge. Now most folks know that your skate blades need to be sharpened, but some folks think that sharpening them means to sharpen them like a knife, where it's going to come down to a point. And that is not the case with ice skates. With ice skates, whether they're hockey skates or figure skates, you're going to have two edges, one on the outside on one side and an edge on the outside of the other. And what's going to happen is you're going to have what's called a hollow in between. There's a little bit of a divot that runs right down the blade. And the size of that hollow is actually referenced by, if you continued that little crescent shape of the hollow around in a circle, the radius of that circle is the size of your hollow. So if I had my skate blades sharpened to a 1/2 inch, which most beginners do, that little crescent shape that would be between one edge and the other would continue in a circle that would have a radius of 1/2 of an inch. Now it's those two edges, one on either side, that allow us to do the various maneuvers that we need to do to go forward, turn, go backwards, stop. We're going to use the inside and outside edges of our skate blades to do all those things. Now, before we get to pushing off with one foot than the other, we have to understand some of our muscles that we use while we ice skate are different than the muscles we'll use when we're walking or running. And so what I will do is demonstrate an exercise that you can do to practice with those muscles called sculling or a swizzle. And so what you're going to do is use your blades to go out and then back in, out and back in, out and back in, out and back in, and get a feel for how those different muscles are going to be working. To start skating, we're going to get in that position again where our knees are bent out over our toes. We're ready to recover if we need to. And we're going to put our feet in the shape of a V. This is the way we're going to start. But instead of a normal V, it's going to be sort of off-center a little bit, so that one of my toes is pointing towards the direction that I want to go. Most people are familiar with using a scooter or a razor. And when you have one foot on the scooter, you push off with the other. I'm going to use my right foot, and I'm going to use the inside edge of my right foot to push off. And I'm just going to glide on my left foot. And I'm going to do this as if I was riding a scooter. My left foot is on the scooter, my right foot is pushing off with that inside edge, and I'm just gliding on the left. Every time I push off, my right foot recovers and comes forward with that left foot again, and then I'm just going to go to the right foot. I'm going to point it where I want to go, use the left foot to push off, as if I'm riding a scooter, and I'm going to get a good feel for that. And when I'm comfortable with each foot being able to do that, I can put those together and actually begin the process of skating. Remember, you're using the inside edge of your push-off foot to kind of push against the ice. You're going to glide on your other foot, and then you're going to recover. So it's basically a 3-step process as you're skating, is to push, glide, recover, and it's alternating between one foot and the other. Left foot glide, right foot glide, left foot glide, right foot glide, until you're moving forward. You're just alternating the steps between your 2 feet. So now that we know how to go forward, we're probably going to want to know how to stop. So there's 3 ways that you're going to stop. 2 of them are probably the easiest for beginners. The one that is the most easy is using something called a snowplow, and skiers will know this technique. It's basically putting your toes toward each other a little bit so that you're starting to make the shape of the letter A. So as I'm moving forward, those edges of my skates are kind of plowing against the surface of the ice. That friction is slowing me down and stopping me. Another way to stop is use the T-stop or the drag stop. basically as I'm going forward on my glide foot, I'm going to use the foot that I just pushed off with, bring it to the back of my skate to make basically an upside down letter T. And I'm going to drag that back blade. That friction will slow me down and stop me. The hardest way to stop is to use the half turn, or what some folks refer to as the hockey stop. And to use the hockey stop, you need a little bit of momentum. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your knees, your toes, your hips, your shoulders, and everything's going to turn about 90 degrees all at one time. And again, you need a little momentum for this to work. It's hard to do while you're going slow. And usually folks like that method of stopping because they like to spray their friends with snow. Now that we've learned how to move forward and to stop, we're going to learn a little bit about turning. Now, turning can basically happen if you're going slow by just pointing that glide toe in the direction you want to go. That glide foot can actually turn wherever I want it to turn. I just point the toe in the direction I want to go. So if I push and glide, and I want to go left, I just turn that glide foot to the left and let it take me there. If I want to go to the right, I glide on that right foot, just turn my toe, and let it take me to the right. It's also good to be aware of a little bit of ice skating etiquette. Usually beginners stay towards the outside of the rink. So if you're not real comfortable, kind of stay on that outside. People will know to avoid you. You also, as you become more comfortable, don't want to weave in and out of people. As you're becoming more confident, other folks may yet still have a little bit of trouble, not be so sure in their balance. And by coming close to them, it makes them a little uneasy and they can lose their balance and fall, and we don't want that to happen. So just be careful of other folks, try to give them their space, and always remember that your skate blades are sharp and they can cause some injury. So always kind of be aware of where your feet are. Don't sort of go plowing into a group of people with your skates up and going towards them. It can cause some injury. So we want to be very, very careful with that. With that, I hope that you are able to get out and enjoy Mother Nature here in the wintertime. We don't always get the opportunity to have good ice. When we do, we here at the park work pretty hard at trying to maintain an adequate sheet of ice for people to come enjoy themselves. But while we have the conditions, please take advantage of it and kind of enjoy wintertime while getting a little bit of exercise.